This whole podcast discussion here is just a brief discussion centered around Amir Khan and the topic of how do you fix a chin, man? How do you resurrect a once great fighter? And I really don't know the definitive answer to that question because it's one that's a little difficult. I've contemplated it for a while. I don't have a straight up answer. The thing about Amir Khan is that a lot of people talk about his chin. Up until this past Saturday, Amir Khan's chin was not wasted. It was suspect to some extent, but it was not wasted. Now after this fight, facing a bigger man and a very big puncher, this type of knockout, although it looked like the one he took from Bradis Prescott, it may have been a little bit worse in the extent of his damage. We don't know that yet. He did seem very recovered afterwards in his hotel room. He seemed like he was very coherent, very intelligent, very sharp. He knew the mistakes he made. And he does seem to be the kind of fighter who can pick up from that and clean those mistakes up. And I'd like to see that happen from here. But one thing he has to keep in mind and really look at the example of is, and I've said this a couple times before, specifically Junior Dos Santos. Junior Dos Santos not only still is a budding, exploding star on the MMA scene. And the thing about Junior Dos Santos is that he has a plethora of skill. He has so much potential, the same way Amir Khan does. And what did he do? He switched his tactics and his game plan up. Now, he just faced a very big puncher coming off of some bang outs himself. Just like Amir Khan, he was riding high in his career until he came across, a fighter or two that laced him and just absolutely See, the first time he faced Cain Velasquez, it was actually, he knocked him out the first fight, and then in the rematch, it was a bit of a drawn-out battle, but then he lost after getting, beat on for the second half of the fight. Then in the third fight, he decides to face him again, and this time he gets stopped by slammed and pounded out, and all the damage that Cain did to him, it kind of culminated there, and I was starting to wonder if his career was hitting an end. But then he went on to string together a couple of nice, good fights. But then, when he seemed like he was recovering and everything was going good for him, and like Cain was just that guy who was just his Achilles heel, then comes Alistair, who I still think may be juiced up Overeem. And he just boxes beautifully, and he catches Junior, and he shows that his chin is still open up a little bit, because that's another thing. When it comes to recovering from concussion damage, there's still a big question mark as far as the time period. And if you don't wait long enough, you'll do what I call opening up your chin. What that term means is your chin now, there's now a rift between you and your consciousness the minute that your chin takes a certain amount of trauma. See, if you heal properly from a concussion, your chin can actually be just as good or even better. But if you don't, and it's so easy not to, what'll happen is even a lesser puncher will be able to rock you and rattle you. And then you'll see stuff like with Roy Jones, where now if anybody who's a solid puncher catches him one good time, it's hard to describe. It's almost like there's no synapse there. It's almost like there's no gap there, no cushioning there. There's no rattling moment. There's no out and unable to get your bearings or get your feet. Now he just goes completely unconscious. That's what happens when your chin gets opened up.
Now for a break. Now for a break.
I don't know if that's happened to Amir Khan yet. I don't think it has, believe it or not. But Junior changed his game plan. Junior Dos Santos started boxing better. He started being more defensive, more head movement, and another thing that's key, perpetual movement. See, Amir Khan listened to the tutelage of Virgil Hunter very well in this fight, and he really was boxing well, but there's a certain static nature to his technique at times. Amir has so much potential, but when he sticks and moves, one, he doesn't throw uppercuts. Two, he doesn't mix it up to the body enough. Three, his combinations aren't sustained long enough. Four, his movement is jerky, it's not perpetual. He moves beautifully overall, but it's not perpetual. It's very cyclical. It's very rudimentary and routine. You know how he's gonna move. I'm not saying that you can constantly get a beat on his in and out movement, but he just moves in and out the same way. In and out the same exact way. And the thing is, what that does is that allows somebody to close the distance better on you. When he fought Canelo, he could have took a page out of Junior Dos Santos' book, because Junior Dos Santos' last fight against Ben Rothwell, that was a tough fight. Ben Rothwell isn't just a hard-hitting, dangerous guy. He's deceptively, freakishly fast and agile for a guy so big. And moves well. And has excellent boxing technique and skill. That was a very dangerous fight. And not only that, the guy was on a red-hot streak of wins. He was red-hot streak of wins. And he came to that fight dialed in. He even had moments where he was setting up traps and he was coming in to just straight end Junior Dos Santos. And just because of that movement, it kept him just out of harm's way. That perpetual movement where you're moving, but it's not patterned. You're moving and you're using the entire ring, freely. Amir Khan comes in the front door, tags him with a little combination, moves back a little bit, goes out the back door. What about coming in the front door, dancing a little bit on him, tagging him with a combination, then going back out the front door again? Keep him confused. He attempted to do something like what Floyd did, but one thing you notice about Floyd, and the same thing that Junior did, they move, but you don't know how they're going to move. They don't always tag you and then retreat. Sometimes they'll tag you, move to the side, spin off, hit you with another combination. Sometimes they'll press forward with their defense and be in your face evasive, smothering your shots or getting off the angle of your shots and then ripping like a couple power shots to your body and then going back to boxing again. That's the kind of stuff that keeps your opponent honest. That's how Mayweather was able to keep Canelo off him and not catch a big shot like that. That's what Dos Santos did. You gotta crack though. One thing that he can work on is get that power up. I know he worked on it a little bit but he was just doing it to get the size. You need to work on it to get that concussive power. Don't be so afraid of losing a little bit of your speed. The speed will be all right. You need that concussive power. You need to work on that in sparring and in training to be affirmed that when you come in the ring, you have something to sting and do with this. Because you notice, the opening second of the fight, the whole crowd was off of their chairs. Because the first thing that happened in that fight was Amir walked forward and he did a beautiful combination. I think he like a straight to the body. I think it was like a jab to the head, then a straight to the body, then 1-2 down the pipe. And it was just so crisp and fast. It was like, ooh. And he had several combinations and movements like that in that fight that were like beautiful. But you'll notice, They never moved Canelo. Never moved him. And one thing that you can help with your power is uppercuts. Like I said, an uppercut is one of those equalizer moves. Even if you are devoid of any power, a well-timed uppercut counter, that will keep a dude honest. Even if it doesn't knock him out, it will keep him honest. He kept going for check hooks. Hooks are not going to do it. If you don't have power, a hook is really not going to do much. An uppercut will split a dude. I mean, those are the things, if he's going back to the drawing board, those are the things he's got to think about. You know?
Love for the city. I was born between cages with reciprocity weighing on my mind. Amidst the tragedies I experienced, elevation and creation, amazing secrets unlocked between the pages of promise. How much is untold? From trapped in a bubble to expose. I feel my life is ablaze, and onlookers want the ember. That's some explanation. But rage is hard to evolve and unravel like a black hole. If I could write the world a letter, the paper would explode. Where do I begin, and where is freedom hidden? Am I a product of admiration or hatred because I'm driven through a tunnel drilled into the heart of Africa, praying to reach goal? Tears coming to my eyes, a soldier rising to his feet. Audience captivated. Check out my technique. I'm pining over this work and hope it reaches you beyond the checklist of a madman. Confided in you, I hope these fears never reach the surface. A letter to a strange world. Serious as the pliers of genius, and yet he's unknown. I always said a fool loves a debate because it's a weapon with which you humanize a beast. Or a line of logical thought because the truth is fear and the chasm is deep. Baby, the end is near. I was born over the line. There's no question in my mind of what can happen. I wonder what will. Think of a paradise. Wonder what is forever. My last verse, you can read it at the end of the world. What are the odds of being mind of a broken vase, champion of the page, dead on the stool of the third round in a life of rage? Sometimes I don't know whether to let my guard down or lock and load, whether it's a beautiful world or a jungle. The symbolic pugilism is high science, a passion and a talent that I never escape. Born with reservation and passion, born caged animal, raised among apes. My vision is a painter that's entitled Born To. I was born to embrace. Although my life is a nightmare, I dream of waking up into a new world. The only thing is none of you exist. I clutch a fist to the black moon, the misty haze and vision. Lovers I kiss and kill, world division. I always had a love for the winter. Listen, it tells a story. Encased in a blue gem, smaller than most, was cold, driven under madness. You remember the gem as it fell and shattered. Love for the city and these consequences don't exist. There's only time and power, poor and the rich. To these I say this, rise. My teacher showed me that every instrument in the composition should have a voice of its own. You tremble at seeing the return of Jokatech. He's only rolling in the pit. When he stands, all enemies will fall. And if you don't find a way to become what you need to become, then you will cease to exist. You're already here. And you'll remember not the day of destruction, but the day of the gift, but the day of a healing, but the day of the curse, but the day of the march, but the day of the search, but the day of the shootout, but the day of the lynch, but the day of black history, but the day of the poem, but the day of the drought, but the day of the storm, but the day of the free, but the time of peace, but the month of